when I came to Teachers College in 1995, Harold became my informal mentor. I didn't know him. I never studied comparative education, but he did take me under his wings, and he always had advice. Two pieces of advice I remember, and he would lift his finger when he gave an advice. One of them was, promise me to never ever work for an international organization. And then he added, even if they pay more than Teachers College salary. And the other one is, don't waste your talent with working for a project. And the way he said project was like something sinful. He said it with such a disdain to work as a consultant. So most of his advice I followed. Some of it I didn't, but he was always good to me and always had an ear. He would listen and he would offer his advice. And as Susan said, he was proud when I got tenure, when I became promoted. I felt like he was proud of me, and I had his protection. Harold was tech savvy, and I was amazed. I think it was 3 years ago or 2 years ago, he enrolled in a MOOCs course on 19th century history. And he loved the idea that he had to correct assignments of others, and 20, 22-year-old students had to correct his assignments on the MOOC. And he took great pleasure explaining to us what he has learned in MOOC courses. As a scholar, and some of you have mentioned that, his work in Soviet education, that was the other thing we had in common. He also loved to speak German with me. He was really a polyglot. He was very important in policy studies, comparative policy studies, especially his work on salaries. He was interested in contradictions. One of the contradictions he was interested in is, how does the Soviet Union, the government of the Soviet Union, manage to pay different salaries to teachers and education staff, but make it seem that everyone is equal. So his whole work on the Stavka system, which is to this day, as he says, institutions don't change easily, is very influential in understanding the composition, the many supplements that exist in the Soviet, but also in the post-Soviet and Russian salary system. So to this day, his work is really influential in policy studies and planning. Let me talk about my last visit. My partner was here, and I saw Harold on December 25th in Florida, less than 2 weeks before he passed. He was lucid, articulate, and funny, as always, but in very frail health. He invited us to the cafeteria where he would go in the afternoon. He ordered his scotch, but he didn't drink it. He wasn't in the mood of drinking anything, but he was a gentleman, and he was known in the cafeteria as the gentleman with the British accent. Nobody knew he was a professor. Nobody knew his stature. Nobody knew he was a dean. He simply didn't care. He wanted to have a good conversation. He was interested in an interesting conversation. He was not into status. He was very unassuming. He told us a funny story in that cafeteria. He said he would go down to the cafeteria and he would meet others, and they would always ask him, so how many children do you have? Just to have a small talk. And he realized that he would give inconsistent answers. So many of you, my generation, you know that cheap cologne 4711? So he thought of a way of remembering how many offspring he has. He said 4, 7, 1. 4, 7, 3. 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. That's how he remembered to say when he would be asked how many children he had. He was filled with funny stories and interesting stories. and as someone said, he was an amazing storyteller. His dear wife, Helen, whom he loved, and the children, his 4, 7, 3 offspring, meant the world to him, and also the daughters-in-law and the partners of the family. When we asked him last year in December how he was doing, he smiled and said, "What do you expect? I'm 94. And he continued, "All I want to have a quiet exit." And he kept repeating that. So I would like to thank the speakers for reminding us today of Harold's presence in his academic community, his family, and his students. And I would like to thank all of you for gathering here today at Teachers College to mourn his absence.